Welcome to Cruising on the Edge. I'm your host, Carol Cruz, where real talk, real purpose, and real recovery we're going to dive into today. Today is such a special episode for me. I've been waiting to do this in this community for a very long time. I'm here with my chiropractor, Dr. Noel Sepulveda. I
You
know I
got it. That's
probably
good.
said it wrong, and I will be corrected, and I completely understand. Um, Dr. Noel is joining me. Someone, someone has played a big part in my recovery and my wellness, in my journey. Let's see. Hold on one second. I want to get to your bio. Um,
Mhm.
you've been my chiropractor. You're incredible practitioner. You've been a friend. You've almost been my therapist at times when I'm on the
Yeah.
table. And it's been over 6 years, right?
Yeah.
I believe I met you when I was after an accident, and I needed to see a chiropractor for my settlement. And you worked downstairs. You had your office downstairs from an office that I was renting at the time. So
Mhm.
let me get into our conversation, but I want to share your bio.
Mhm.
So Dr. Noel is a DCMC chiropractic physician, clinical nutritionist, CEO of Preventative Health Solutions, a lifelong Bridgeport native. That's Bridgeport, Connecticut, for those that don't know. He blends chiropractic care, nutrition, rehabilitation, lifestyle medicine to support whole health healing. And Dr. Noel is also an adjunct professor at Housatonic Community College and the University of Bridgeport, my alma mater. His mission is to empower patients through integrated healthcare, pain management, and personalized wellness and solutions. We're going to also post some information on how you can get a hold of Dr. Noel at the end of this podcast. So welcome, Dr. Noel.
Thank you so
Uh,
much. Good morning. Thank you very much, Carol. First, I'm honored just to address the first thing you said, to be part of your health journey. Um, I almost forgot that you were working upstairs. That's how we met. Because it's been so long. So again, thank you so much for inviting me to the podcast. Thank you so much for our personal experience together. Like we say, we talk about pain, personal, and politics all the time.
Not all at once. Sometimes it's too much to handle. I would be in an adjustment every 24 hours after the
Right.
last one, which I was
So
there
as Carol
yesterday.
said,
Awesome.
yeah,
I feel nice
we
and
have
loose and juicy.
we have a very integrated relationship, right? So we've become friends on top of our personal relationship, and I'm honored to, be part of the podcast. And I've seen it from her perspective, from a thought, an idea to a goal to something that she started working on, and I'm very happy that we're at this point right now, right? So
I appreciate that. Thank you. And again, we're going to dive into more of that
yeah,
conversation on how health and wellness and adjustments and alignment really
yeah,
affect the whole body. I'm going
yeah.
to
So I wanted to
actually,
kind
I
of
want you
decipher what
to
you said
really
too.
dive, take us to that place, to your early beginnings, and I
Yeah.
guess, I'm going to start off in at that first question. What inspired you to explore the human body and healing?
Yeah, right. So, what I was going to say was to decipher a little bit about what you introduced was the idea was, what do I do, first of all, in a very clear way, which is basically integrated or concierge medicine. The whole idea of going to one place and be able to address multiple issues is really a void in healthcare. So there's a lot of doctors like myself who are trying to fill the void of how do we put all of the pieces together, because too many times healthcare is just, I got to see my dentist, then my podiatrist, then my this, then my that, and the left doesn't talk to the right. And you're not really looking at healthcare in the holistic sense. So holistic is a very popular word, but how does that actually translate into a physical thing? Where can I go for holistic, right? Where can I go and treat my whole body? So that's really where this all came from. I was lucky enough to be mentored by a couple good doctors who also worked in integrated medical centers, right? So basically, integrated medical center means there's multiple doctors from multiple different disciplines who all can treat you in a central location. So I got a chance to see how that works, right? Get multiple providers to work together in one location. And I was very impressed with the results, right? Because healthcare should always be about results. So I thought, how could I take this idea where really it is, you hear the word concierge, you also think luxury, right? It's not readily available. You have to have money for it. You have to have time for it, right? And money and time are something that everyone are struggling to manage at this point in time, right? 2025, money is very important and so is time. So how can we effectively manage all of that for our patients? So how did I become a doctor? I came from a very well educated family, luckily, who was into church and had very strong morals on both sides. So I knew I did not want to be the whole typical product of my environment, right? So I made a very early decision on in life that I was going to be the guy who took the time to follow through with education, right? Because my family made that important for me. Luckily, I was lucky that way, right? So I get through my first part of education and I get towards the end and I'm not really sure what I want to do, which is a scary feeling for a lot of people that we know, right? You go to school for a long time and you're like, oh man, now what? Right. So I hit my now what moment. And I talked to one of my old professors. He said, listen, you're in Bridgeport. Don't make it such a hard decision. You want to be a doctor. Just look at all the different type of doctors at UB. You're right there. Start there and then start to look outside, right?
Right.
So I go to UB. I blindly went into chiropractic. I fell in love with it from day one of school, and I just went full gear. Grad school, as it should be, is not about the fun anymore. You're there for business, and I did really well in grad school. So I really grasped the concept of chiropractic. Um, like I said, being lucky to have been raised by a good family. My dad was an electrician. My mom was a nurse. So chiropractic was a great hybrid of how can you have a trade man's hands, but a doctor's brain. So the profession really just fell into my skill set, right? Having been an athlete for a long time too. So with chiropractic, athletes and martial artists always do really well. Hand-eye coordination, knowledge of the body, et cetera, et cetera. So I started my career. I worked under a couple of different people under a couple of different models. As she stated, a big part of my practice is personal injury, car accidents, slip and falls. That's classic chiropractic, you could call it, right? It pays the bills. So you got to start with something, right? Same reason, same reason the lawyers do it, pays the bills.
Yeah.
So from that point, I was able to get a job teaching nutrition. So I was able to use my master's degree in nutrition effectively. A lot of people don't get to because, I've spoken with Carol and many others. Nutrition in a clinical setting is very difficult. Not too many people want to pay money to be told what not to do, right? This is the
What
basic.
not to eat unless I
Yeah,
have diabetes and
right,
you send me
right.
to a dietitian. Yeah.
Yeah. So clinical nutrition is very hard, but I was blessed to teach it for a long time and it prepared me for moments like this to be able to educate people. So number one of the main motivations was educating other people, right? If people can't do better with health about stuff they don't know. And then the minority community across the board, we just don't know a lot about it. It was never really a major focus. And as Americans, we're a fast food culture. We're a fast food nation. That's just how we were all raised. I'm 40. I'm in the generation, I'm a fast food baby for sure. Pizza, McDonald's, it's just how we were raised. It's the most affordable options. That's a whole long conversation nutritionally, right?
Far away from government cheese trucks out in New York City. That's
Right,
like somewhat I
right, for
grew up
sure.
on. Yeah.
Yeah, dollar ham and cheese right down the street, right from the corner store. So, breaking those chains requires a lot of education. So, that was really how I was able to make that decision that going integrated health and going holistic was going to be an educational
Mhm.
challenge, right? So as Carol will tell you, and part of my practice is super important to just every visit to add some type of educational piece. Because if I'm not teaching you what to do, you're just going to keep doing the same thing over and
And
over.
expecting different results. Yeah.
Right. And then it led us to basically the title of this particular episode, which is Mind Body, is how
Mhm.
do we really connect the two? So again, I came from a very educated family. My aunt is a PhD psychologist from Yale who was in practice over 20 years before I started practicing. And, I told her, listen, I'm seeing these car accidents. One of the number one things that I see in these car accidents is post-traumatic stress disorders and anxiety disorders that were not there before. People would literally say, I got into this accident and now I can't even drive to work because the anxiety is overwhelming, right? So I said, listen, we have this really natural opportunity in the office, a void that we could fill for patients that I'm treating. Then I said, then we can keep the money in house, all the other good business maneuvers that I had to do to bring her over
Calculated
to
unit.
my
Yep.
side.
Right there. I've been in
So
those businesses and they work. They work.
yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
So my aunt, she caught the idea. She was still, even herself, after having been a psychologist for so long, was not sold on what I was trying to sell her, that listen, we can help a lot more people and continue to increase revenue in our business by adding these services together. So it really started off with that, just the addition of psychiatric care to my physical practice. And a lot of my professors, people that I had worked with, they knew integrated medical, but they're like, kind of like, whoa, nobody really does this. Where are you going with this? Like,
Mhm.
how, what's your idea? And I got a lot of support from some of the older people in my profession that I was really close with and giving me ideas, people who had run hospitals and really large scale, they knew what I was trying to do. And they were just like, man, I can't believe you want to go that far with this, but here's the supportive structures. And so I learned really quickly how to add all those together. I tried what worked, what didn't work, and we ended up with a pretty robust program at one point in time. I will admit that the clinic now has kind of downscaled a little bit since COVID. The format, a lot of things changes, your demographics change. That was something I wanted to talk about in the podcast, was once we get to the idea of running a business and balancing that part, you have to be a human who becomes comfortable with change. And I am not. So that's been a big part of my journey too.
I don't think you and most of the people in this world, right? Yeah,
Right,
especially
right.
what we're dealing with right now.
Yeah. So I would say at the height of the machine of my business and my career in the last 10 years, we had a couple psychologists and clinical social workers. We had a primary care doctor and
Mhm.
the physical medicine. So physical, primary, and behavioral health all in one setting is kind of like is it's a very, very good focus, once
Mhm.
you get through the details, and people who work in the healthcare field. If you can make that work, you really can affect a lot of people in the right kind of way. And we do no longer offer primary care services,
Mhm.
for a lot of reasons. The main one being just healthcare right now is overtaken by these large corporations, and they just have
Yep.
the
Mhm.
they have the market on primary care, and that's neither good nor bad. It is what it is. They have the technology, they have large staff facilities, and so there's a lot of good reasons why going to those people is very advantageous. I don't have x-ray here, I don't have $1 million machines in my office, so we all offer different things,
Yeah.
but
You have
ultimately.
also several hospitals within proximity
Right.
of your office that you
Exactly.
can refer
Exactly.
folks to,
And
right?
if you
And
go
I'm in the
to a
business of
doctor,
referring,
yeah.
you
Yep.
assess, if I don't have what you need, it's like the Macy's
Hmm.
Gimbals, and I'm
Exactly.
aging myself when I say that, if I don't have
Mhm.
what you need here at Macy's, I'm going to send you to Gimbals.
Yes, right, right. So you're all keep that in mind when interacting with your healthcare providers, is the
Mhm.
healthcare provider who does the best by you knows what tools they have and knows what tools they don't have. So they know when it's time for you to see someone else who can offer even better care, more focused care, more specialized care. That's super important, for all of healthcare. So
A lot of
without going too
intuitiveness in
far,
that,
just to answer
right?
that
There's
initial
there's the
question.
science, but there's the art right?
So there's really that is on paper in chiropractic education. You
Mhm.
literally take the class of the art, the science, and philosophy of chiropractic.
Mhm.
And chiropractic is a very special profession, not just because of my bias, just because of the principle that I spoke to. That chiropractic is a health science that very heavily relies in the art of, and the art in chiropractic is how good do you use your hands and how well do you know how to affect the mechanism, the machine of the human body. And then if you get really good at it, you get to work on the brain and the neurological aspect. I studied under a clinical neurologist. So my
Mhm.
clinician, my mentor was a genius. You know,
Wow.
the so smart that they're socially awkward, that type of guy. Yeah,
Yes.
for sure. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I loved him to death. I gifted him a huge picture of himself and me for graduation.
Join the weirdo club, I
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I
The
so
wonderful
proud of
weirdos.
my weirdness.
Yeah, absolutely. 100,000%. So, and lastly, to add to the question that you initially,
Mhm.
which I thought was important in reflecting on today, was it was my own personal journey, right? I have
Yeah.
definitely not mastered the human experience, the mind body connection. I
Mhm.
definitely have moments where I don't have control over my mind and I don't have control over my body. It's none of us are perfect and none of us will be perfect, but being able to integrate my education, my personal experience, and vice versa, being able to platform to improve my own mental and personal and physical health has been part of the journey too.
That's awesome. There's so many things that you said that I've been writing a little notes over here, and I'm going to step into because it kind of leads into the next question.
Yeah.
Growing up in Bridgeport. But when you mentioned about your dad being an electrician, my ex, as you know, is an electrician. But the first time I ever went to a chiropractor, which was after an injury, I was a certified nurse's aide.
Mhm.
I was trying to lift up a patient's pants at the nursing home. I got stuck. I couldn't move,
Mhm.
and I ended up at a primary care physician's office. They gave me a muscle relaxer, which was a temporary band-aid, right?
Right.
It really didn't. And also being in early recovery, I was about 5 years, 4 years into recovery. Um,
Mhm.
I didn't want to take any prescribed medication, which again, for back injuries and things like that, they were giving pain medicine. They,
Right.
that was kind of like the beginning of the
Yeah.
whole opioid crisis and things like that.
Yeah, for sure. They weren't even
And that
really
was
pushing
scary. And
physical
so from
therapy heavy.
there, I found a chiropractor who I end up taking my son to because he was also diagnosed early on with ADHD. And someone, little birdie, actually someone from my church at the time, said they work for this chiropractor. Please come down. They may be able to not only help me, but help my son. And I was like,
Mm.
oh, okay. And again, never having went gone to a chiropractor before or having an adjustment. And I remember, I had this great adjustment from this doctor. And then they also, my son was scared, of course.
Mm.
He was only about 4 or 5. And the doctor said, hey, Ray, we're going to turn your lights on, your adjustment. And I thought, wow. And he's like, see, don't you feel like the electricity running through your body? And that was just such a metaphor that I've
Yeah.
taken. So that
Forever.
whole turning your lights on when you get an
Mhm.
adjustment, because there's blockages, right? There's
Right.
those blockages that I know I've experienced when I had my car accident. It was tragic. I got overturned right down the street from you on Main Street. And it wasn't just a physical trauma, it was the emotional trauma that I had
Mm.
experienced at the time.
Right.
And trying to again bring that into how do I recover from this? It's not
Hmm.
something one and done. It's not get an
Right.
adjustment and then you're good. Like it's
Mm.
continual maintenance. So it was a couple times a week and then it was, turned into monthly and I come to you every other week,
Mm.
which keeps my lights on, keeps my
Mm,
thinking clear, especially in the work that I do. I work in a crisis behavioral health addiction field, and I get second hand trauma from the
yeah, for
people
sure.
that I listen to, or
And third,
talk to or try to
just like
do.
smoking, right? Second and third hand,
Absolutely.
it all kind of, those all mirror each other for sure, for sure.
Hmm.
And the comparison, electricity has always been like a really classic chiropractic, model because it just works, right? How many times have I explained to you something about light switches and light bulbs and
Hmm.
keyboards and computers, and we're really talking about the body, but it works the same. So, you
And it's
know,
perfect storm with your mom being a nurse as well.
yeah,
Yeah. And
exactly.
your
And so
aunt being in
it's
psychology. Hmm.
exactly. And I
Yeah.
mean, it even spills over into like my personal life now. I like to literally build cars and motorcycles
Yes.
from
And he's got
scratch.
some really cool cars. Yes, I've seen that. I don't know if I've seen the motorcycle though.
Yeah, but I
You
actually
built your
sold one.
motorcycle too, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. To fund my car addiction.
Next spring maybe. So,
Yeah, yeah.
again, going back to your roots and your culture and growing up in Bridgeport, how has that shaped you in your community around health,
Yeah, yeah. So
wellness?
for sure, one of the other major factors that I forgot to mention during like the shaping of my career and my
Mhm.
educational choices was my mom was also very, very injured, heavily injured and disabled from a car accident while I was in undergrad, high school actually. And so once I started to go back to the idea of what type of doctor I wanted to be, my mom actually was in a wheelchair at the time. And you've met my mom in many, many occasions over the course of being here. Was My mom is no longer in a wheelchair after surgeries and all that kind of stuff. So, it really was definitely part of my decision and focus and learning about the spine and chiropractic care was, to take my mom away from the model that you had just described, which is surgery, injections, medication, and then if that doesn't work, PT, medication, injection, surgery. So it's literally a cycle going back and forth. And chiropractic is one of the more discriminated medical careers. You can look up chiropractic online and see the word quackery and all this other stuff, but we are educated just like medical doctors with additional education. So that's a whole medical political conversation about the
That'll work
basis.
in one of the questions that I have for you, but
Yeah,
keep
yeah. Are we
going.
actual doctors? You know how many people I tell, like, the bar joking, oh yeah, you're not a real doctor, and I'll just joke back, like, yeah, I know if you're having a heart attack, call 911, right? If I'm not a real doctor.
Yeah,
So people still have misconceptions about our practice, but when it comes down to it, and Carol will attest to this, we are primary care doctors as well. We will
right.
evaluate you for your entire body, all of your chronic illness. We'll address the things that we can and send you out to the specialists who need to pay more attention to the things that we can't. So that was part of really legitimizing what I do, was being able to
Mhm.
share the practice with other doctors who could also help my patients. And then we all just compound the credibility of each other when someone can come and get their physical, their blood work, some diabetes medication that they didn't know that they needed, address their back pain, and address their PTSD from when they were 5 years old. That's pretty much a home run in healthcare. And that was what I was going for. Even though we have downscaled now, being almost 2 decades in practice, we can still provide that same level of care because we have community partners, people that I grew up with, doctors that I know who look like me, who came from the same place, who all decided that we are going to stay in our community. We could be rich in any other town, in any other county, in any other place on earth. But part of really taking your God-given talents is giving it to the people who need it the most. And in this environment that we have, I think that we should commend everybody who's focusing on providing services to the people who need it the most. And ultimately, that's the basis of a
Absolutely.
community-based practice. If it was about money, I'd be working for you.
Hmm. And I love that when you said, community-based practice and staying where you're grounded, where your early beginnings, and even those that do reach out outside their community or move to another state,
Mhm.
and earn those dollars. Many of them, we hope,
Yeah,
come back to the community, right,
yeah,
to
for
give
sure.
back, right? We
Because we
hear
like
about these
you.
campaigns, especially around the holidays, right? There's these who use campaigns about giving back,
Mm.
and that is not only rewarding for them, it's rewarding for us.
Yeah,
I again, the business I got into, I didn't get into making a whole lot of dollars, yeah, as a recovery coach, but it is, yes, rewarding. And I've also built into things like this, starting this podcast, because I want to reach, not only reach other demographics of folks. I want to stay put. Bridgeport is where I got my recovery. Where
right,
Bridgeport was where my bottom was hit. I got
right.
pregnant and I came into recovery. And so every time I drive into Bridgeport from Milford, which is only a few minutes away, I'm ever reminding and so grateful that I am still part of this community. I
Yeah,
may
for
not have
sure.
an office there anymore, but I'm still very well connected within the
Intimately,
community.
absolutely. 100%,
Yeah.
absolutely. And like you said,
Yeah.
just leading towards the question that you asked,
Hmm.
for the people who watch this podcast who are not from around here, just look up Bridgeport, Connecticut in the 80s and 90s. We don't really
A
have
lot of
to like go
history.
into too much detail. It is
P.T.
what it is.
Barnum.
Yeah, we all got Father Panic Village. Look up. That's where I grew up. So, uh, you
I
know,
drove by there yesterday. I didn't
right,
recognize it. Oh my God. I
right.
haven't been by
And
there in years.
I use the term product of the environment because I feel like that's
Mhm.
still a very important term that's talked about. There will be people who will use that conversation. Well, no, you're not a product of your environment, or you
You're part of
shouldn't
the
be if
hood.
it was bad because you're doing good. Look, you're not like that. But that's the entire point is, sometimes the most resilient people are the ones who develop streets and book smarts. Be out of, I
It's
didn't
a
choose to be
transformation. There's music, there's culture, there's
right.
dance, there's color, there's
So it is.
everything
It is.
in
So just
theory.
like the person who is not here, deceased, or in jail was a product of their environment, so am I. It's a glass half full, glass half empty statement and conversation. If I
Yeah.
did not go through what I did, then I wouldn't have the resilience, the knowledge, and the experience that I do now. So it is what it is. And that's all roads lead here, and this is where we are. So, definitely where I am in a position to sit and talk to you in this podcast has always been about blessings and not about hard work, right?
Yeah.
It really has. I've just been blessed to be positioned here. Now the hard work has gotten the second part. Because without hard work, you can't run a business. You can't effectively employ people. You can't have families who rely on you for their groceries, multiple, right? When you own a business and you're hiring people, especially when you're hiring your own family, you're hiring family members of each other. So you have a lot of responsibility financially and otherwise. You can't do any of that without hard work. So I'm not going to say that it wasn't hard work, but it was mostly the blessings, the opportunities, and the people who helped me, you know? And that's just
You
where I'm
definitely shared how, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interject, but
at. Yeah, no,
you definitely have shared how you've integrated, your practice in chiropractic, your master's in human and clinical nutrition, and how those disciplines have really complemented each other, and you've shared with us, again, the training that it's taken, to get through those places, to get to
mhm,
where you are right now in your
yeah.
practice and in your business. What are some of the misconceptions about chiropractic medicine you want people to be clear of
Yeah, I
the
mean,
stigmas?
the biggest one is that still sticks around is that number one, we're not real doctors, right?
Mhm.
So,
Mental
just so
health.
you know, I did do 4 years of undergrad and 4 years of medical training.
Mhm.
Simultaneously, I did an additional two for my master's. Chiropractic, we are allowed to do pretty much our residency during the program. So we are lucky enough to be able to practice immediately when we graduate. We have the same clinic hours, education hours per subject, plus some as MD medical doctors. So that's one of the big ones, right? I am in fact a doctor, and I definitely operate under those
Full
guidelines. It's
disclosure, folks, he is a doctor. I am not.
so it does take. and then you have to operate with all the responsibility that legally and medically and ethically that comes with that too, right? So that's number one. The other big one is that we do in fact treat the whole body. That doesn't mean I'm gonna make your cancer go away,
Right.
right? I'm not gonna directly make your diabetes go away, but I can have an effect on the systems, right? And that's a really long technical conversation, but let's even backtrack that. Most people think that chiropractors only treat your spine, right?
Right.
However, we treat your fingers, your toes, your ankles, your
Always
knees, your
clicking
shoulders,
my fingers,
right?
pulling
And
on my legs.
right, the chiropractors are very
Mm.
good at extremities, right? Because we
Okay.
are in fact full body doctors. So that's also a really super important one. And
Mhm.
another one, and more practically, is that we do in fact operate with insurance, including in Connecticut Husky. That's very important
Yeah.
because Connecticut has a very large portion of Medicaid recipients, right? That's a very large part of our medical demographic as per who we can serve. There's a lot of people in our area who have state um, Medicaid insurance.
Mhm.
And since 2018, they have started reimbursing again in our state for chiropractic services. And that's really super important if you're going to be a community based doctor to meet the patients where they're at, right?
Right.
Having a cash pay um, price that your demographic can't afford is not serving you or them, and not accepting the health insurance that they have is not helping them, and it's not helping you. You know, it may not pay as much as other revenue sources, but money's money, right? When it comes to business,
Right.
money is money.
Yeah.
And if you're going to serve effectively, you have to serve everyone
Mhm.
equally with no bias. And that's also important in the state of Connecticut to know that
Mhm.
chiropractic is reimbursed by Medicaid insurance.
And
And other than that,
that's what draws people in the community. Again,
yeah, for sure. Yep.
Bridgeport isn't like New Haven, right?
Yep.
Money is not poured in. We don't have a Yale. And,
Mhm.
we have the University of Bridgeport that has gone through tremendous amount of transitions
Yes.
since I moved to Connecticut.
Mhm.
And again, this is a part of it's not a rich scheme,
But
but
yeah.
it is helping to attend to the whole body and like you've said often, educating. I've learned so much every time I come to the office. Not again because we
Mhm.
talk about politics and things,
Yeah,
other
yeah,
things,
sure.
but even the music that's played, right?
Yeah,
How it brings me into, I could come in with a really crappy mood and I'm listening to the music and that's bringing me, it might be calming music, it might be salsa, it
for
might,
sure.
whatever. And again, it's the atmosphere, it's what you bring that meets people where they're at, that
Yeah,
makes them feel
specifically, yeah.
comfortable.
Specifically in my office, we put a lot of effort into the full experience as a
Mhm.
result of our mantra and our motto of how we practice. I mean, Carol will tell you everything about my office is super intentional. The colors, the equipment, the music, we have food, we have, everything.
Yeah, I've
Yeah,
grabbed a couple of tea bags on the way up.
for sure, for sure. It's there's no way it's all about meeting people where they're at, and it's been a very interesting experience, again, if you're not from around here, just, take a look at our demographic that we're talking about. Bridgeport, Connecticut's a very unique place,
Right.
socioeconomically, financially, legally. There's a lot of caveats to where we live, and it's definitely not all good when it comes to running a business here, into the demographics and the profession that we're talking about. Mental health is a very sensitive issue
Right.
for many people. So we've had to deal with not just all the good, but the bad, the confrontation, um, you know, threats to the safety of the
Mhm.
location, people. It's a very intense and um, you know, uh, how would I say? There's a lot of factors when it comes to dealing with mental health alone. So imagine we deal with three different large categories of healthcare treatment. So I would say that one has been the most challenging, was figuring out a way to do it effectively, including safety measures, right? So in the front of my office, we have a buzzer system. You can't just walk in, you can't
Right.
just do any, you know what I mean? Everything is built for the safety of everyone, including the people who are being treated. So, the journey has been personal, and translating that to a business model that I know will appeal and relate to the
Mhm.
people that we're trying to get through the door. That's really what it has always been about, was being relatable to the people that we're trying to help. And like she said, we talk politics, socioeconomics, and all this other stuff, but there's really baseline stuff as humans, no matter where you are, right, left, blue, red, green, yellow, West Coast, East Coast. There's some really basic things that ring true for everyone. Is everyone wants to be good, everyone wants to feel good. So how can we help them do both? Be good
Yeah.
and feel good.
Yeah.
And
I
that's
see
yeah,
that being in
my
around routine, building
mhm,
routine, right? I've spoken a couple times on this podcast about how important it is for me not just to have my cup of coffee in the morning because I work nights and I don't go to sleep right away, but have that cup of coffee, do my journaling, do some stretching. I'm not always as good at that, but I
mhm,
do. I do my best on adjusting myself, watching how I'm sitting, my posture is. All of those have to do around turning my lights on, making sure that
mhm.
my whole body is functioning to the best of its ability, right?
Right,
And if it's not, then I need to, I'll get a sign. I'll get an ache or a pain or
right.
something that's saying, "Ooh, that's something I need to pay attention to. Is it something I can take care of myself? Or is it
Mm,
something that I need to call up,
yeah, for sure.
Dr. Noel and get
Yeah.
myself into an appointment? Maybe I
Yeah,
just saw you a
but
couple of days ago,
just to
but I've been sitting
interject a
in
little
my
bit.
chair for 8 hours almost in the work that I do as in a crisis call center, and that I'm not getting enough of my walks. I take pride in doing that. Again, building routine. And that's some of the things that you definitely helped me with, right? And
Mm,
just those slight reminders, those soft reminders. It's not like your fingers pointing in my face and you're doing everything wrong. It's, hey, what do you need to do differently? How about trying this? So what are what are three daily habits or supports that can contribute to long-term wellness that you would suggest or you do yourself?
yeah, so I'm gonna give you my favorite. This word is so overly used in my office with my patients that like she's probably good. She could predict the four-letter word I'm gonna
I love
say.
your wife, Carmen, by the
Yeah,
way.
yeah. Thank you, thank you. She's that's very intentional
You're
too,
right to
right?
the point.
All the big energy stays up front. Like that's the
Mhm,
first thing you see when you come in here. She's got big energy for everybody, and that's super intentional, right? To just jumpstart the process. So,
mhm.
um, so back to your question.
Yeah.
Three daily things. Definitely yoga, right? And I really lean heavily on yoga. And what I really mean is meditation, prayer, stretch,
Mhm,
exercise, whatever version of that you want to call it. But it's really just personal time of physical movement, right? That's important at every age, but definitely more important with age. And it's super important for the second part that we lean on here, which is the PTSD and anxiety management, right? If you're not
mhm.
taking time to center yourself, and it seems super hippie, but until you take the time to do it,
I'm a
you
hippie
don't,
baby.
right? You're not gonna see, the value of it until you actually do it. So I always
The
start my
practice.
patients with yoga,
Mhm,
but it's really just a period of time every day for physical movement, right?
mhm,
And then maybe these are together, but the second one would be the opposite, right?
mhm.
Which is a period of time to just sit still, right? We
Yeah.
live in a
Mhm,
really, really busy world and all that, but
mhm,
just to sit still. So maybe you do both of those at the same time, where the
mhm,
first 15 minutes is meditation, prayer, and focus, rest. And
mhm.
then you move in towards the movement part. But just like any other Asian yin yang principle, every principle of balance and mediation is you got to do both to get in the middle. So 1 and 2 would be a period of time where you're really centering yourself with silence and stillness, and then another period of time where you're focusing your body on moving, right?
Right.
And then the last three is really, the last one of the three would be a really concerted effort on consumption. So what do I mean, right? I'm not saying that every day has to be your best diet day, but at some point in the day, you have to stop and think, okay, what am I going to eat and what's the best thing that I can
Taking in,
eat
yeah.
that day, right?
They drink enough
Water is
water.
also a part of that conversation, right? You know, that's another big one in my office, is water, 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 right?
Yeah.
And my best thing to remind people is water is about frequency, right? Water
Mhm.
is not about being the guy at the gym with a gallon trying to chug it all by the time you're done. It's about, have I drank any water this last hour or
Mhm.
half hour? And I'll be happy with 4 ounces, right?
Mhm.
Just enough to
Yeah,
quench
I
your thirst
take a
when you're
sip while you're
thirsty, right?
talking.
And drink more frequently. So I would say the most effective healthcare techniques that I could give you for a 3 point plan for the day is
Mhm.
a moment of movement, a moment of silence, and a focused effort on your consumption. What are you putting in your body today? And I think that's a good start. And those are really easy.
Mind, body, spirit.
Yeah.